I was told that humans were cold, not in the way you might think. On my world, Aethys, we speak a language of warmth. Our skin glows with soft light. When we feel trust, our bodies radiate heat that others can sense from across a room. When we feel love, we burn so bright that the air around us shimmers. When we are afraid or angry, we go dim and cool. Every emotion we carry is written on our skin in temperature and light, and no one can hide what they truly feel. So when my people first encountered humans, they were disturbed. These creatures radiated almost nothing. Their skin was dull and opaque. They did not glow. They did not pulse with warmth when they spoke kind words. They smiled by pulling back their lips to show their teeth, which on Aethys is something you do before a fight. Every diplomat who returned from human space said the same thing. They are cold. They do not bond. They form alliances out of convenience and nothing more. Be careful around them. I believed all of it. Why wouldn't I? I was Princess Vailith Sundara, third-born heir of the Kiranai sovereignty, and I had been raised on these warnings my entire life. So when the council chose me for the diplomatic mission to Earth Station Jericho, I went with my guard up and my expectations low. I was the third in line for the throne. That meant I was the one they could afford to lose. The station was enormous. I will give humans that much. It hung above their blue-green planet like a silver city, and inside it hummed with life and noise and purpose. Captain Lena Song met me at the docking bay. She was shorter than me by nearly a full head, her dark hair pulled back, her expression calm and professional. She extended her hand. Among my people, we greet one another by pressing our palms together and sharing our thermal signatures. It is how we say, I am open to you. Feel what I feel. I pressed my palm to Captain Song's hand and felt almost nothing. Room temperature, like touching a wall. I kept my face still, but inside I recoiled. My senior advisor Thenrik stood behind me, and I could feel his disapproval radiating off him in waves of cool blue light. He had warned me. He had been right. They assigned me a security escort. Sergeant Declan Morrow. He was a quiet man in his middle years with a scar along his jaw and eyes the color of deep water. He called me, Your Highness, exactly once. I corrected him with my proper title. He nodded and never got it wrong again. That surprised me. Most species fumbled with Kiranai honorifics for weeks. He carried a heavy coat with him everywhere, olive green, battered, old. He kept it folded over his arm, even though the station was perfectly climate-controlled. I assumed it concealed something dangerous and made a mental note to have Thenrik file a complaint. I did not trust this man. I did not trust any of them. The negotiations began, and they were tedious. We wanted technology exchange. They wanted passage through our space lanes. The human delegates talked and argued, and made concessions, and pushed back. And through all of it, I sat across the table, trying to read them the way I would read anyone on Aethys. I searched for thermal shifts, for changes in glow, for the involuntary language of the body that tells you what words try to hide. There was nothing. They were blank to me. Masks with voices. I told Thenrik one evening that I could not understand how a species without thermal empathy could function as a civilization. How did they know when someone was lying? How did they know when someone was afraid? They were blind to each other's hearts, and yet they had built stations that orbited planets and ships that crossed stars. Thenrik sipped his tea and said, Cold species find cold solutions. Do not think about it too hard. So I didn't, for a while. The first crack came in the mess hall. I had been eating alone in my quarters because the Kiranai food the station provided was poorly prepared. The spice ratios were wrong, and the textures were off, and eating bad food when you are already lonely is a special kind of misery. One evening I tried the mess hall instead, hoping a change of scenery might help. A large, bearded human, named Tomas, was working behind the counter. He watched me pick at my plate for several minutes, then walked over and asked what was wrong with the food. I told him, expecting him to shrug or become defensive. Instead, he asked me to show him, so I did. I stood in a human kitchen for 20 minutes, explaining the proper ratios for kethroot broth to a cook who listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and took notes on a grease-stained napkin. The next day, my meal was better. The day after that, it was nearly perfect. He had added a small garnish of dried sera leaf that I had not even mentioned. He must have researched it on his own. I told no one about this, but I stopped eating in my quarters. Then there was Morrow. I began noticing things I had previously ignored. He learned which lighting frequency gave me headaches and adjusted the corridor settings before I walked through. He memorized my schedule so completely that he was always positioned exactly where I needed him, without my ever having to look. When Thenrik insulted him openly in Kiranai, calling humans thermally dead and assuming Morrow could not understand, Morrow's expression did not change. But later that evening, I saw him on his datapad, studying Kiranai vocabulary. I asked myself what a cold creature would want with our language. It had no warmth to offer me. What could it possibly need my words for? One afternoon I found the station's observation garden. It was a biodome filled with earth plants, green and strange and fragrant. Morrow was sitting on a bench reading a book made of actual paper. He looked up when I entered, nodded once, and returned to his reading. He did not stand. He did not perform any gesture of rank or deference. I was offended. Then I realized he was treating me the way he treated everyone. Not as a princess, not as an alien, just as a person who had walked into a garden. I sat down on a bench across from him, and we stayed there in silence for 40 minutes. It was the most peaceful I had felt since arriving on the station. I still wrote "the human" in my private journal, but the words were starting to feel dishonest. Then came the night everything changed. A coolant system in the Kiranai quarter malfunctioned. Temperatures dropped fast. For humans, it was uncomfortable, perhaps 5 degrees by their measurement. They would shiver and complain and be fine. But for my people, cold is not simply discomfort. Our biology depends on ambient warmth. When the temperature falls, our glow dims, our thoughts slow, our minds begin to scatter like light through broken glass. Kiranai hypothermia is not just physical, it is cognitive, emotional. You begin to feel a deep, ancient loneliness, as if you have been abandoned on the night side of Athos, where nothing lives and no one comes. Thenrik and the other Kiranai staff were evacuated quickly through the main corridors. But I was in a secondary passage, separated from them by a pressure door that had jammed. Morrow was with me. The cold came in like water filling a room. My glow flickered. My fingers went dim. I felt my thoughts begin to thin, like fabric stretched too far. I slid down against the wall because my legs did not feel trustworthy anymore. I knew what was happening. Clinically, precisely, I understood that I was in danger. But the knowing did not help. The old fear was pressing in. On Athos, there are ancient stories about children left on the night side, unwanted, unloved, sent into the dark where the cold would take them quietly. It is our oldest terror, and I could feel it wrapping around me like arms I did not want. I was cold in the way that means alone, cold in the way that means no one is coming. Morrow knelt beside me. He was speaking, but his voice sounded far away, like it was coming through deep water. I could see his face, but I could not read it. No glow, no thermal shift, just those still, deep water eyes looking at me with an expression I did not have the tools to translate. Then I felt something heavy settle over my shoulders, rough fabric. It smelled like old leather, and something faintly chemical. Machine oil, maybe. It was his coat, the one he carried everywhere, the battered olive-green coat from whatever cold world had made him who he was. It was not heated. It was just fabric and thread, and years of wear, but it held my body's remaining warmth against me, reflected it back, slowed the bleeding of heat from my skin, and more than that, more than the physics, more than the science of insulation. On Athos, to give someone your warmth is the most intimate act in our culture. You share your fire. You say, without words, I would rather be cold than let you be cold. It is what parents do for children, what lovers do in the long twilight. It is sacred. Morrow did not know this. He could not have known. He was just a man giving his coat to someone who was freezing. But I looked up at him, and he was in his shirt sleeves, arms folded tight against the chill, his jaw clenched. He was cold, obviously, visibly, undeniably cold, and he had given his coat to me anyway. And I understood, with a clarity that cut through the fog like a blade of light, that I had been wrong. About everything. He did not say anything poetic. He did not make a speech. He said, "Repair crew is 8 minutes out. You are going to be fine." I started crying. Kiranai tears are warm and faintly luminous. They fell on his coat and glowed there for a moment before fading. He looked away, and let me have that moment without making it smaller, by acknowledging it. The repair crew came. The temperature rose. I recovered fully within a day. Then Rick blamed the humans for the malfunction and demanded formal apologies. I said nothing. When I tried to return the coat, Morrow waved me off. "It's just a coat," he said. But I had done my research by then. That coat was standard issue from a mining colony called New Galway, where he had grown up. It was the only personal item he had brought to the station. It was not just a coat. He knew it, I knew it, and he gave it to me anyway, and then called it nothing. Because that is what humans do. They pour out their warmth, and then pretend it was not important. I went back to the negotiations the next week, and I saw the humans differently. I watched their faces, the tiny shifts around the eyes, the way their voices rose and fell with feeling they thought they were hiding, the way one delegate touched another's shoulder after a difficult session, the way Captain Song brought tea to a junior officer who was working late and set it down without a word. 1,000 small fires, invisible to anyone who only knew how to look for light. I wrote my report to the Kiranai Council, and I knew it would cause trouble. Then Rick opposed every word, but I stood before the council, and I said what I believed. We glow because we cannot help it. Our warmth is reflexive, involuntary, as natural as breathing. We deserve no credit for it. Humans do not have that luxury. Every kind word they speak, every gentle act, every coat draped over cold shoulders in a freezing corridor, they choose. Again and again, in a universe that gives them no biological reward for doing so, they choose to be warm, and we call them cold? We, who have never had to make that choice, dare to call them cold? The trade agreement was signed 3 weeks later. On my last day at the station, I found Morrow at the observation garden, reading, as always. I sat beside him and placed a package on the bench. A Kiranai thermal cloak, woven from thread that radiates gentle heat, calibrated to human comfort. I did not explain it. I did not need to. He picked it up, ran his thumb across the fabric, and looked at me. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "No," I told him. "I chose to." He smiled. That strange baring of teeth expression that I once thought was a threat. I did not flinch. I smiled back, in my own way, and let my glow rise warm and golden until the air between us shimmered. I left Earth Station Jericho, carrying his old coat, folded neatly in my luggage. He never asked for it back. I never offered to return it. I still have it. Some nights, when the twilight on Ethos grows long, and the old myths whisper about the cold, I take it out and hold it. It does not glow. It does not radiate. It is just fabric and thread, and the faint memory of machine oil. But if you hold it close enough, you can still feel the warmth. You just have to know how to look for it.